Sanna was going to come up and have a bit of a chat around AI and data and what Microsoft are doing. I'm just going to get you a quicker. Give her a report.
I think this is fine. All good. Yeah. Okay. Good morning, everyone. As you can see, I'm very nervous. This is my first time speaking to an audience like this one. I do have my phone with some of the notes that Copilot helped me build at 1 a.m. in the night yesterday for my presentation, so I might be looking there. But yeah, as... okay. Oh. Wonderful. Okay, let's test this. That works. All right, so I'll start off with an introduction. My name is Sanna Nazir, and I'm a cloud solution architect for data and AI at Microsoft. What that basically means is I help our customers build a lot of data and AI solutions. So I sit more on the technical side of the world. Lots of conversations these days around copilots, around Azure OpenAI, around all of the other AI services we have. So the theme of my conversation today is going to be the era of AI, on point with what Mostyn was saying. We do have sort of this idea of something we call as artificial general intelligence. What that basically means is this being or this machine that is capable of thinking just like us. You might have seen some of the movies we've had since our early 1950s, 60s about how AI is going to take over the world. But that's kind of the sense of what artificial general intelligence means, right? It's a being that can think like us. There's a few different tests we've actually built to guess whether the current state of AI meets what we think AGI is. There's no right definition of what AGI actually means. You might have heard about the traditional Turing test, where a human speaks with a machine and a human, and if the conversation is indistinguishable, you can consider it AGI. Turns out that test can actually fool us. If you talk to ChatGPT today, you might think that's AGI, but it's not. There's a bunch of other tests that have come up with our own research around this. There's something called an IKEA test, where you test a machine building a piece of IKEA furniture, and if it can, then you think it's AGI. So we don't have a formal definition of what AGI is, but we have heard about sort of this. We do have this sense of sort of a Marvel cinematic universe, where we have two sides of the battle with different arguments. I think I was speaking with Pauline this morning around copilots and the adoption around copilots and adoption around AI, and you might have different sides of this battle going on in your head as well. We do have the Thanos side of the version, where we kind of believe, or Thanos side of the version believes that AI is kind of the path to destruction for us, potentially might destroy humanity, so we should just stop, take a breather, and destroy what we already have on AI and not go any further. And then we have the Avengers side of the argument, where we think we can work with, learn, build, and learn from our own mistakes and continue moving forward without taking a step backward, essentially. And guess which side Microsoft falls on. So with Microsoft, we do kind of sit on the opportunity side of things. We do believe that we might make mistakes, but we can learn from those mistakes and continue moving forward in this journey of AI. So my focus for today's conversation is going to be the opportunity side of AI. So if you're on the Thanos side of the battle, I'm sorry. With AI, we have actually made a lot of strides across the world. There's stories that you read about. There's a lot of positive impact going on, even before this era of copilots or generative AI actually came into the scene. You might have heard about stories around wildlife conservation that is happening with a lot of UN organizations. You use AI-enabled cameras, monitoring systems, biodiversity metrics to focus on things like preventing poaching or preventing deforestation in the Amazonian forest. There's a lot that's happening in this positive space around AI. And that's the kind of opportunity Microsoft also wants to focus on. Going from the social impact side of things to the actual commercial impact of it, if you read about some of the reporting that's coming out these days from some of the most reputed organizations across the world, One of the studies from PricewaterhouseCoopers recently talked about how AI is the greatest commercial opportunity in today's economy. So for businesses like ourselves, it presents an opportunity or a global boost in GDP around up to 14%, with almost $16 trillion added to the economy. That's a very, very big number. There's also sort of surveys and assessments done by The Economist where different executives talk about how they believe AI is going to be the next big opportunity for changing their businesses or tackling the sort of strategic challenges they face. So it's not just the social impact that AI can create, but also for the commercial aspect of it, the huge economic opportunity it presents. And sort of combining this thought of the different opportunities, we didn't just land on AI suddenly. It's been something that we've been going on a journey for almost 100 years now. And the earliest discussions around AI started back in 1950s, where we actually started thinking about, could we have a machine that thinks just like us? And hence the term artificial intelligence, which is basically what we started off with as an idea. But it wasn't until like 50 years later that you actually had a usable form of AI, a form of AI which you could actually apply to specific problems, essentially what we call as machine learning. Machine learning actually took a lot of our knowledge from mathematics and statistics and modeling and plugged that into this sort of technology code world to apply to specific problems. Problems like, can you predict my sales revenue for me based on the last 10 years of my data? Or can you predict whether it's going to rain tomorrow or not? So I can potentially see whether I want to host a game outside or not. So applying specific statistical models, to very specific niche problems. Beyond that, just over a decade ago, we landed on this domain, or didn't actually land on it, we worked towards this domain of deep learning. Now, deep learning takes the idea of how human brains work, just the biology and the anatomy of it, and applies it to programming. You basically have a bunch of different neurons connected to each other that are talking to each other, passing information to each other, and pull out specific, or give you specific applications. I think one of the big breakthroughs here was in autonomous driving, where you have vehicles that can see the environment around them, make decisions based on what they see in the environment around them. So deep learning has been a very big breakthrough about a decade ago that actually led us to this era of generative AI where we are right now. Now, generative AI, a very tiny subset of what we call AI, essentially refers to the kind of artificial intelligence that can generate new stuff. It can generate text, it can generate images, it can generate videos today. So this is kind of the big buzzword we keep hearing about right now. You have ChatGPT that became like the innovation of the decade, where you can talk to a machine as if you were talking to a human. It can help you strategize, plan, write emails for you, or make presentations for you, or help you make talking points like it did for me yesterday. So you have these technologies that can actually augment the human lives. While we are a long way away from AGI, we're still not there. This era of generative AI actually presents the biggest opportunity for us. And it's already creating a lot of value. You have creatives using these co-pilots that we have these days for mocking up designs and presentations. You have managers that require support with writing the mundane emails, writing down tasks, making to-do lists, and using a co-pilot to kind of automate all of that process for them. You have developers like myself who might not be so confident with their coding and use co-pilots to create a base program for them that they can fine-tune and refine. So it's not like this value is imagined. It's actually here. And if you look at our corner of the world, even in Australia, a bunch of reports that came out last year point to the significant numbers we have in terms of productivity increases and the kind of value that generative AI is actually creating right now. And it's only been like, 8 or 10 months that generative AI has been embedded into products. So it's 10 months of innovation. Before that, it was just academia research, something we were working towards. So it's very amazing to see how the leap forward in AI has happened from time where it took 50 years to move to the next stage, where it's taking less than 10 months now to make the leap to the next step. So it's very amazing with what generative AI is doing right now. So the Tech Council of Australia actually came up with this report last year where it talks about the specific opportunity Australia has with generative AI. And there's big numbers here. I might misquote some, so I'm going to look at the slide. But if we take a conservative estimate where we think that, okay, we might be slow with adopting generative AI, and we might need time and guardrails before we start adopting this, even then we have a $45 billion economic opportunity to us. If you take more of the Marvel side of the Avengers side of the approach and have a more optimistic approach to it, we land on a number that's much, much greater, $115 billion in terms of an opportunity. And a lot of these gains are going to come from automation of tasks, augmenting our tasks, and creating new products and services. When we say automation of tasks, that doesn't mean automating away everything that a job might do, but it means automating away the mundane parts of it. I don't want to write redundant emails every day. I don't want to read the same report that comes out every month and create an analysis of it. Maybe I can have my Copilot assistant do that for me. It also means augmenting our jobs, helping us make some of our creative strategic decisions. Maybe asking it to collect some reports around Gen AI and pull out the numbers and tell me where the opportunity lies so I can then think about my organization's strategic direction as well. Or it can be the introduction of new products and services that have not existed before. This is again something that kind of takes up 10% of this economic opportunity, and we have already started seeing products like Perplexity that have popped up after generative AI came onto the scene. These are completely new products, completely new services that couldn't have existed before. And we often kind of hear the fear that comes up with big changes, something that happened with the internet boom as well, in terms of what happens to the jobs we lose. What about the jobs we lose? And yes, changes require effort, changes require a lot of energy and attention to them, which is true. We might have some jobs that kind of go away in a few years, but we will also have some jobs that do not exist right now. So the key opportunity for us here is, again, quoting some of the numbers that this report has, by 2030, we expect 200,000 jobs in Australia to be just about AI. And not just technical jobs, you don't have to be a programmer. You could have non-technical jobs, legal jobs that work with your AI infrastructure. So there's a lot that is happening in this space, and we are still kind of catching up to the pace. In 2023, we had about 33,600 AI workers across Australia, which is way, way small than what we expect 2030 to be. So there's a required growth rate of about 500%. So AI is the thing you want to upskill on, for sure. It is going to be that big piece, which everyone is going to ask for. It is going to be that big growth opportunity. And the key thing for us is transitioning of jobs and upskilling towards that direction. Now, any big opportunity comes with its challenges, comes with its set of actions we kind of need to do. And some of the biggest challenges with this opportunity of AI and generative AI is essentially that sense of enhancing technical capability, whether that's enhancing the technical capability of your organization, so your executives, your leaders understand where the opportunity lies, what directions do we want to take, or it's enhancing the technical capability of your workforces, so they can be up to date with this pace of change that we are experiencing and move towards the jobs of the future. There's enhancing awareness and skills, again, from the perspective of our organizations, from the perspective of our regulators and policymakers as well. And the big one here is responsible AI. We do want to make sure that we don't end up on the Thanos side of the world, but actually on the Avengers side of the world. What that means is we do have to have conscious guardrails around AI. It's not that we won't make mistakes, we might, but we do have to think about it from the onset of the process, not as a nice little add-on at the end. We just plugged some responsible AI into our product. The actions will come from both regulators and policymakers, as well as adopters like ourselves. Policymakers and regulators in Australia are actually focusing on this immensely right now. You might have seen some of the acts that are coming up, the AI transparency report requirements that is going to come up from next year, that is going to be implemented in Australia from next year. So if you are working around AI, your organization needs to publish a transparency report around how you do AI, what are you doing with your AI. So there's a lot that's happening in the regulation space already, and Australia is kind of at par with how the global regulations around AI are moving. At the same time, our regulators and policymakers do also need to kind of envision what AI for Australia will look like. What is the vision there? What direction do we want to go towards? And how do we make sure that Australian people are at pace with that change that's coming in this world of AI? And then from the adopters' perspective, like ourselves, we kind of need to understand where AI is taking us. How do we make sure our organizations have the investment into AI, have the awareness around AI, and our workforce is up to date with AI? Now, I'm going to take a quick example from Microsoft itself. Why? Because there's no doubt that Microsoft has been one of the pioneers around AI. The investment in AI for Microsoft has been decades old, but it only shot up into the scene in the last 2 years with the advent of generative AI, because generative AI has unlocked this opportunity and unlocked this connection with human beings by talking to us in our language. But AI has traditionally been a bit more complex technically, but now we have this nice little interface where you can talk to these AI systems in your own language, whether that's English or whether that's any other native languages you might speak. So it's a very new way of interacting with machines, very much similar to how graphical user interfaces were created, and that shot up how we have handheld personal devices now. So Microsoft kind of believes in this idea of we are our own first customer. We gotta go and test everything on ourselves first before we actually start sharing it with the world or sending it out into the world. And the mission you see on the screen is actually something that has been there since the advent of Microsoft. It's something that is embedded very deeply into the processes, even with the investment around AI. The kind of approach Microsoft takes with AI is broken apart into 3 big pillars: meaningful innovation, innovation that actually matters, creates change, creates positive change, empowering people to use AI, whether that's your everyday business users or an experienced machine learning engineer. How do we make sure that this complex thing called AI is accessible to people? And then, of course, responsible AI and our practices around that. Now, if you read about the kind of stories that Microsoft has, there's a lot. You'll find a lot of different stories. For example, we are working with, in India, we've developed this app called Jugalbandi with the AI for Bharat initiative, which allows farmers to interact with government programs and schemes in their native languages on WhatsApp, which is really amazing because it takes away the digital divide. It allows people to interact with these AI systems in a way that is native to them. They don't have to learn a different language. They don't have to go and find a new interface. Everyone has WhatsApp these days. So it's very easy for them to interact and take benefit of something that is already there, which is their government schemes. There's other stories that Microsoft has, a lot of them actually. The idea behind all of that work is creating innovation that actually matters. You do want to think about what are you supporting, what are you working with your customers for? What sort of objectives do your customers have towards the use of that AI that they are creating? Are they creating things that are going to create positive change, or do you see something else? So focusing on what sort of innovation you want to create. A big focus for Microsoft has also been on empowering people to not just build AI, but also consume AI in a way that's most easy and accessible to them. So in the last 10 months, you would have seen the term Copilot being thrown around a lot. What does Copilot actually mean? it's a rendition of AI as an assistant for your work. You would have seen Copilot for PowerPoint, helps you make presentations. Copilot for Outlook helps you write your emails. Copilot for Teams is one that I'm really fascinated with because it allows you to listen to a Teams meeting without having to take active notes. You can participate in discussions, and it just summarizes everything for you afterwards. It also tells you what the sentiment of the meeting was. Were people bored? Did someone actually talk? Who talked for how much of a duration? What were the key points? What were the key actions? All of that kind of stuff that we had to work more than 100% towards listening and having multiple threads in our brain working is something that AI can help us overcome. So that's something for your everyday users. But on the other side of the spectrum, where you have people that want to build their own AI, maybe tomorrow UB Park wants to build a specific AI system that is catered on their data, that understands parking data and is able to answer questions about that parking data, that's grounding your AI, your own custom copilots in the data that your organization holds. So that ability to create your own custom copilots that work just for you on your information is something that's supported as well. So that's kind of the other side of the spectrum. So varying from your everyday users to your engineers that want to develop new AI, there's a lot that Microsoft is pushing out right now. All of these products kind of cater to the same fundamental principle of how do we empower people to use and create AI in the way that they would like to do it. Sort of responsible AI is kind of a very big one. Something that I personally really like about Microsoft is that it hasn't been a 1 or 2 year journey. Even though generative AI kind of shot up onto the scene a year ago, Microsoft's journey with responsible AI has been almost a decade old now. It's something that we've been sharing publicly as well, learning from the feedback, understanding the regulatory requirements around the world and the ever-changing regulations that come up as well. So it's something that has taken over decades to refine. But the refinement of that responsible AI journey is essentially encoded in the form of these 6 principles that you see. These 6 fundamental principles underlie everything Microsoft does around AI, whether that's developing AI for our own internal usage, whether that's creating AI products for our customers to use, or whether that's working with customers like I do in my day job for them to create their own AI. How do I make sure that they have responsible practices embedded as well? So these 6 principles you see are kind of the foundation of all of the work Microsoft does. Internally, externally, you might have seen some of the Senate hearings that happened recently with a lot of technology pioneers and a lot of the industry players that the Australian Senate held, Microsoft being one of the organizations that had to sit there. It's a very long hearing, but you might see some of the snippets around for that one. Kind of codifies everything Microsoft talked about there as well. How do we make sure these principles are at the core of everything we do, so they're not a nice little add-on after the product has been developed, but actually something that we initiate and start with? How do we codify these principles, which are abstract, into implementation? How does an engineer understand, okay, what do I mean by fairness? How do I write some code that embeds fairness? So there's a lot that Microsoft has done in this space, and I encourage you to go and check it out. Everything is publicly shared, something that we encourage our customers to do as well. What I would like to kind of synthesize everything I've said till now with this idea that AI, artificial intelligence, is just a professional tool. Like many of the other tools we use, it is going to be one additional tool in our arsenal, maybe one of the most powerful tools we use for our work, but the humans are still the drivers of that tool. What you choose to do with that tool is a decision you get to make. And like every other tool known to human beings, it can be used for good, it can be used for bad. And to use another Marvel reference here, with the great power comes the great responsibility. The responsibility of making sure that the AI we develop, that the AI we put out there, and the AI we sell to our customers, the AI we create for our own work, the AI we help others build, actually has meaningful impact is within the guardrails and security and regulations of our time and does not create more harm than it does good. So the future can be positive. Again, going back to my reference of the Avengers side of the argument, I believe in the opportunity of AI. It can be positive if we embrace the opportunity and make sure we have all of the checks and balances we need to keep moving forward. With that, I'm going to end my presentation. Thank you so much. That was within time.
We're not going to let you go too far, Sanna. I'm sure there's some questions. So as you get your questions, Sanna, you obviously raised a very good point there at the end around that could be used for bad and could be used for good. What is Microsoft sort of doing to make sure that they're doing everything it can so it can't be used for bad?
Yeah. One of the big things, I guess I'll talk about it from different verticals. First one being the kind of development we do internally, what sort of products we design. So a lot of what we design is, again, founded in those principles of responsible AI. So there's a lot of guardrails you will see even with the kind of offerings we present to our customers. A good example is when we started up with Azure OpenAI and Copilots. If you interact with Copilot and you try to talk to it very rudely, you'll see that there's a bunch of filters built in. It's not something we pushed out just because it was ready to be pushed out. We embedded those responsible AI principles first. So you do need to have those guardrails in development of your products. That's one big thing that Microsoft does right from the start. But there are bad actors out there around AI, not something you can stop. It is public knowledge. It is our human knowledge. So one of the big initiatives that Microsoft has running right now is called the Secure Futures Initiative. And there's a lot of different programs that we have going on there. One big program is focused on AI and bad actors in AI, and how can we tackle some of these new ways of cyber attacks that's coming up using and leveraging AI. So there's a lot happening in the space, both from the perspective of development as well as the products that we share out there.
So if I start my task question to Copilot,
Yeah.
please, do I get better results?
Yes, you do.
Very good. Any questions from the audience? Yes, Barbara, come down there.
Hi, Barbara from Duncan Solutions. This is more of a personal question because I'm fascinated by all these things. When I first started learning about the future and this history, the year of singularity was around 2072, and I know now it's 2045. So
Yeah.
will this now push that year even earlier so machines and humans have that same level of knowledge, you would think?
That's a great question. Okay, so like you said, this is a personal question. I'm going to give a personal answer because this is just my opinion from what I know about AI. I think 2045 might be too soon because while it seems closer with the advent of generative AI, because we have this AI that we can talk to like we talk to a human being, it pushes out so much amazing content, it's able to reason, all of the new models that have come up are getting even better at reasoning. I don't see that the other components that a singularity would need anywhere around it. So going back to that sense of artificial general intelligence, we might have an interface now where it's easier to communicate, but all of the other things that make a human being human are kind of missing in the puzzle. So personally, I think 2045 is too soon, but who knows what else is happening out there.
Anyone else got a question? There we go, Liv.
I'm Olivia from Ubi Park. When you've sort of talked about that, we had quite a big difference between what AI started off very early. We've come through, and you said that 10 months that we sort of had the open AI coming through. How is Microsoft going about educating people on how to use it? We've all used ChatGPT. It sort of appeared. It's now part of what we use daily.
Yeah.
How is Microsoft educating people, making sure that the right information is available so that we don't head down the Thanos path?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think given the sort of presence Microsoft has in the industry, there's actually a lot of different channels that are going on, whether that's in the form of social media, trying to target more of our younger customers, or in the form of blog posts or YouTube channels, or in the form of people like myself going to events like these where we can talk about AI, you'll see a lot of us showing up in different places, essentially. But yeah, there's a lot of motions around awareness and skilling, especially in education. We do have a bunch of programs we run with high schools, around K-12 education programs, a lot of programs we run with universities, not just focusing on the commercial spaces, but actually focusing on where the whole human journey starts as well. So that's kind of us doing a little bit of what we can towards awareness and skilling. Skilling as well, if I focus on that, there's a bunch of programs that are obviously offered to some of our enterprise customers, where we work with our enterprise customers, which is kind of part of my day-to-day job, where I help our customers learn about AI, upskill in AI, and then actually build technologies and accelerated solutions with AI. But at the same time, focused on non-commercial spaces as well, where we host a lot of these events at Microsoft, events around Microsoft, and events like these where we try and participate to talk about AI and sort of build the awareness and skills around those spaces.
Pete?
G'day, Peter from Sunshine Coast,
Hi, Peter.
God's country, Australia. I believe there's been a bit of a lull in the development of AI. Like we all talk about ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini. Are you seeing new forms of artificial intelligence emerge, and from what areas would they be?
When you say new forms of artificial intelligence, what exactly do you
Well,
mean?
a lot of the artificial intelligence that I'm seeing in my space is a direct plug-in from those forms of AI. I've been looking at emotional intelligence, emotional AI, which I find very interesting. Are you seeing any other areas where there are forms of artificial intelligence emerging?
So I guess to the first part of your question, yes, there is a lot of focus on just that generative AI sort of the world, because it has not just social implications, but a lot of commercial applications. So humans being humans, we kind of go towards where our money is, right? Because generative AI has had so many commercial implications and it kind of presents this huge economic opportunity, I think a lot of focus has been placed on just that part of AI. So there's a lot of new models coming up just in that space, which can now not just talk to you in text, but actually interact in images. If you snap a picture of your fridge and ask it to make you a recipe with the kind of stuff that's in your fridge, it can actually spit out a recipe. I don't know if the food will taste good or not, but it can actually interact with you in that way. So multimodal models is the next big thing. The other big thing I see with generative AI is small language models. We're kind of hitting sort of these blockers with the compute we have available to us in the world. At the back of all of these models, they do require processing, they require memory, they require the hardware to keep them running. And large language models are so huge that you have trillions of parameters running in a model. So it's actually kind of very computationally expensive for us to run these large language models. So when you talk to ChatGPT and ask it a question, it has a huge environmental impact in the back end. To you, it's just a question. So the other big frontier is coming in terms of how do we build sustainable, environment-friendly solutions using something called smaller language models that have smaller parameters. I think in terms of consumer bases and how they interact with AI, the other big space I see might be in robotics and reinforcement learning. You might have seen that Boston Robotics dog dancing video on YouTube. I think that might be another space that we see blow up soon. Again, these are all my personal opinions based on what I see. So definitely reinforcement learning is very interesting to me, and I think that could be a space that blows up. But apart from that, I think because of the commercial aspect of Gen AI, we're going to kind of be focused here for a while.
Any more questions? Yes, Brett?
Hey, Brett from IPG. For
Hi,
business
Brett.
owners, what's the best place to look for tasks that might generate gains from employing AI? And are there any sort of benchmarks you use when you talk to clients about assessing whether a specific task is feasible for developing and spending capital on AI? Like it has to, I don't know, generate 10% productivity gains or something like that.
Yeah. That's a great question, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have with organizations right now. How do you prove a business case of, yeah, we want to invest into generative AI and it's going to give us X% of productivity gains? How do you measure the financial impact of that and kind of calculate your return on investment, basically? There's no standard benchmarks in the industry at this point, but I think some of these reportings we have, specifically in Australia, from some of the most elite technology organizations like the Tech Council, could serve as a rudimentary benchmark for you if you are trying to build up that business case. For instance, I think there's a 14% gain in creatives being able to use generative AI and reducing the amount of time it takes for them to, let's say, mock up a marketing design for something. So maybe that's a benchmark I want to use. It really depends on what direction the organization wants to take. And in terms of finding what to do, again, it's a thought exercise that the organization has to have in terms of what sort of business use cases are our biggest challenges, and do I think I can use some of these new frontiers of technology to break that challenge? Let's say I'm a healthcare organization and I'm still using paper-based invoices. It's a very straightforward use case that I could pick up and run with, and it's a proven use case that does give you productivity gains and economic gains as well. So there's a lot happening in the industry. I think keeping up with what's happening in the industry and some of the popular use cases is a good idea to look at as well. Some of these reports, some of the stuff that Microsoft is doing in Australia, you might see a lot of use cases that could potentially match what your organization needs as well. So there's a lot of industry standard use cases that are popping up. With generative AI, summarization is a big use case. So summarizing some of the knowledge base you might have. So if you're a legal firm, you have a bunch of legal contracts and documents. How do you make sure your users can go and quickly find stuff and synthesize that information rather than them having to read 10 or 12 different documents to get a sense of what they need? So summarization is a very big use case right now. And there are a bunch of other popular industry standard use cases like those. So my advice or recommendation would be to just keep an eye on what's happening around the industry that you're operating in, what are some of the popular use cases, and then have a thought exercise in terms of what challenges does our business face, and where can I see generative AI tapping and breaking that challenge, which we might not have been able to break before.
I think from an industry point of view, Brett, what we saw in inner traffic at Amsterdam, probably the two main areas, Commend have put out a AI intercom called Ivy, which they've launched in an MVP into the US, but they did demo it at Asia for the people that were at the security conference. So there's probably some enhancements in helping people out in the lane. That's coming through there. Definitely in the data space, and you're obviously using some of the dashboard analytics and some of the AI in there. And the other, is there anyone from Ski Data here? I think Brett's coming a little bit later, but Ski Data also launched their AI or automated valet parking product as well, which they showed in a real live situation, maybe a little bit down the track to see in Australia, but that was some of the innovations we saw. The other thing that, and I'd like to task everyone here today, so we're in collaboration, or Microsoft's asked us to have a look at what AI could be built into the smart parking industry. So we're looking at some topics right now, and we've started from internally where we've looked at and coming up with some topics, but the aim of making sure we had Sanna here today was also to announce that we've got the opportunity to do some collaboration with Microsoft on smart parking AI. And I'm keen, if anyone in the room wants to start sharing, but we're looking for ideas on what can be built so we can start putting it into the platform. I'll ask for questions, but I'll give, if there's any ideas that you can think of, please feel free to put your hand up and share with us, or we'll definitely ask you after the event as well. Have we got any more questions? Very good. Well, morning tea's about to be served. I'd like to thank Sanna for taking her time out of the day.
Thank you, Austin.